Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't joined me before, my name is Dan, and we do a little bit of everything in my cluttered little shop. And today we're back working on a power drawbar for this G0755. Now, this has been a recent addition to the shop, and there's a story there, but nonetheless, for right now, we're kind of building tooling and accessories for this mill and getting it set up to where it will function the way I want it. So we're back working on the power drawbar, finally, after some little detours along the way. But anyway, I'll move you around and show you where we're at. We've got the base machined. I have made a change to the base, and we're going to build the intermediate plate and the top plate next, I believe, and then we're going to start fitting our little impact wrench to that. So let me turn the camera around, and I'll show you what's going on. Alright, so here's our base plate that's going to mount on the top of the mill, and we've got our guide rods already temporarily installed here while we do a fit up on it. Now, I have made one change to this from where I machined it last time. I drilled and countersunk an extra set of holes in the base to mount our upright rod. When I initially set this up, I put my holes and countersinks centered up on where our impact wrench will mount, and it's going to mount just like this, and it will mount on the milling machine like this, and this will mount on the top plate here. And we'll go back and I'll give you a link to the first part that shows the machining of this part. On the other drawbar that I previously built several years ago, I had offset it, and it's worked that well. This fits on our G0704, and it had worked fine for that. So I've added a second set of holes, and that's probably where I will mount it. We may try it both ways, but it seems to balance perfectly well on this setup, so we'll probably use the same setup here. So anyway, these are our guide rods. Now, to adjust spring tension if I need to, I've got some collars that I'm going to add. And these are just a little clamp collar, 1/2 inch inside diameter. And if I need to increase the tension on the springs that I've got, or if I don't change the spring, I'll just add these clamp collars down there. They'll sit on the bottom so I can make adjustment if they're necessary. Now, these are the springs that I picked up. They came from my local Ace Hardware, and there was a question as to which springs I used. These are a Hillman spring. Like I say, they come from my local Ace Hardware. The Hillman number is 62 on these springs. So I think the tension is going to be about right on there. And there's, this unit that I previously built is quite a bit shorter, and I explained why in the first portion of this video. So anyway, those springs are going to go on there. We're going to use oil light bearings on top, and they will sit on there just like that as our guides. And then we'll have our intermediate plate on here. So we're going to add our intermediate plate next, and it will attach to both the body of our impact wrench and our air cylinder that we're going to mount to it. So we're just going to go ahead with the machining of that. So I've already got a piece of aluminum, which is probably going to be enough material to build both the intermediate plate and the top plate. Well, this is the stock that we're going to use for our intermediate plate and probably our top plate both. I think there's enough material here. I've already drawn a center line, and the next thing to do is going to be to disassemble our little impact wrench. The top portion, or the back portion, will go on our control body that will mount on the side of the mill, and we'll run air lines from there up to this portion, and the impact wrench will be permanently attached to here, and we'll cut our air passages in there. So the first thing to do is just lay it out. We'll disassemble this, take the top, we'll transfer on to where we want our mounting holes and where we need our air ports for it. And as long as you don't lose any parts, this is pretty straightforward. Now, you won't use this part. You don't want to lose your springs or plungers here. And these should both be the same. You want to try not to tear your gasket. I'm not sure what's under here, so I want to go ahead and pull it off so it doesn't inadvertently come off later and I lose pieces that I don't know are there. Okay, and you're going to have your valve assemblies in here. So it looks like that will all retain. Now some of the guys I see have not bothered to put a gasket back on here. They've gone ahead and lapped this down and then just mashed it to a nice lap on the back of the mounting surface, and that's enough. We may do that. We may just put a gasket there, and that would be where you would want your gasket, is on this surface, because this is the only place that's going to have permanent air pressure. This is your valve, so you're not going to have any air pass on through unless you activate your valves. So, and here we have, I'm not sure what that little guide pin is. Oh, it's a pin for the whole body. So we can take that out. We don't need it. Okay, so it appears to me that this pin just locks it permanently in place so it can't rotate, is my guess. So we'll have to run the pin right up into our plate. So not a big deal, we'll just have to carefully mount it. So we're just going to use this part right here to transfer our holes. And let me grab a transfer punch. We are just going to carefully center this up where we want it. That looks pretty good right there. Alright, well, we'll use that for our first two holes to drill and counterbore. Then we can use those for alignment, and we can come back and go ahead and mount our other two. This is what we've got so far. This is going to be our intermediate plate, or half of it's going to be our intermediate plate. We've drilled and counterbored it to match the hole pattern on the back of our impact wrench. Now we've got a little guide pin sitting down here, and it stops this from rotating around. All it is locking everything in position. And I shortened it up quite a bit. Now on the bottom side, we've already got it marked out. I've drilled for our pin here already, and this is our center clearance for our little socket head cap screw that sticks out here, or the end of the shaft. I guess that's not a cap screw, it doesn't look like. It's just the end of the shaft on that bearing. So I've counterbored for that. And then I've taken the gasket and just marked where the air ports are, which are these ports. One's forward and one's reverse. So the way this sits on here is it will mount just like that. If we get it all lined up here. Where are we? Looks like we may have to counter. Oh, no, there it goes. Okay. So it sits on there just like that. Like I said, this will be shortened up. Our air cylinder will sit here. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and from the back side, I'm just going to drill those all the way through with probably probably about a 1/4 inch. We'll probably doesn't even need that, but we'll probably run a 1/4 inch through there. Then we'll flip it over and we'll drill it and tap it for 1/8 inch pipe, so we can put our fittings on there. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to go ahead, just drill those. All we're doing is punching 2 more holes through, and then we'll make sure of what fittings we're putting on there and go back and tap the other side. Okay, let's see if this actually is gonna function the way it's supposed to. I like to do stupid checks along the way because you never know what you're going to run into. Can't let that sit down because everything falls out from the inside. And I think these screws are probably going to be too long too. Yeah, we're going to be way too long with all of these screws. Go ahead and get a couple of them started, and then we'll start shortening them up. Alright, I think we've got these shortened up to where everything will work the way it's supposed to now. I'll probably have to go back and set a gasket in here. It looks like there's a little bit of gap there. Now, I don't think it makes a bit of difference as long as it lays down and mates, because there's nothing that turns in there other than the main shaft itself, and I think there's enough float in there that I think it's fine. I don't think we're squeezing a bearing or anything. So we're just mounting down on the housing, or on the main air ports itself that's in there, so I think it's fine. So we should be able to, if we tighten this down, snug, but don't overdo it. And we didn't put a lock washer in there someplace. Which one did we miss? We're gonna have to take it apart again anyway, but that one right there. Now, we should be able to take an air hose Nope, we're squeezing it. We are squeezing it down, so we'll have to do something different there. Let's see. Still no. Alright, well, let's try this again. I opened this center hole up. I think we just needed more clearance around the bearing there. So without the backing plate on, why it works fine. So let's bolt her down again and see if we got it this time. That looks like it lays down much better here. That would be reverse. And that would be forward. So, okay, we got that part of it. Now I think I will go ahead and figure out our alignment, and we'll go ahead and bore our 2 holes for alignment there, which actually will probably be right in there someplace. And then we'll go ahead and figure out where our air cylinder is going to mount on the back side, which is going to be in tight right here. And then we'll figure out where we're going to cut it off on top. Okay, so we will punch our holes and bore this for our bushings, which these are a 3/4 inch bushing, just over. We want a light press fit in there, because with oil light bushings, if you see, these are considered 3/4. These are actually about a 7.52, just over 7.52. If you just bore that to 3/4 and push those in there, you'll squeeze down the center of these bushings. So let's go ahead and we'll just set this up in the mill. We'll drill it, and then we'll have to go back and final bore it. Alright, I'm just going to step drill this out in about 3 steps. I've got a 3/4 inch drill bit here that's we'll start drilling a hole and see if it's going to drill oversized or how close we are here. Yeah, close to the board. Yeah, we'll have to run the boring head down through there. Let's go ahead and drill our other hole and get to that point, and then once we figure out the hole size, we can take the second hole in one cut. Alright, let me clean this mess up and get the boring head out. So we've got not quite a press fit yet. And I'm just going to take a couple of small little cuts. I want to get it to start in there fairly easily. And just a little bit more here. And we left our digital readout and everything set the way it was, so we can index right back to 0 again. And yes, we could have mic'd this all out, but where in the machinist world, you're going to work off of dimensions. When you kind of work in the gunsmith world for so many years, why you a lot of times operate off of feel. So that's what I still operate off of for the most part, is feel. That's the fit we're after right there. Let's go ahead and bore it all the way through. We'll go back and double check that first hole. Yep, that's the feel I want, or that's the fit I want right there. That'll be just right. Okay, so let's go ahead. I want to pull this out, and We'll deburr those 2 holes. And then we'll go ahead and push our bushings in, I think. And check our sliding fit there. Alright, 3/4 inch long bushings. Pressed in there. And if we get this out here where we can get to it, this is going to sit on here like this. Just like that. See what we do with our... There we go. What happens if we put our springs on here? Yeah, we'll have to get a top plate on there to get alignment and everything, but I think it'll... Let's see, we may have to mess with those springs. Okay. Well, no, that's going to go on just like that. And then we can, let's see, let's double check our... Yep. Okay, so we've got our fit good there as far as the impact gun body fitting up onto the shaft. Now this is going to tuck right up in here. Let's see. We're probably going to counterbore this. Go ahead, we don't need it on the... There's no clearance issues there. Right there. There we go. So, there's that portion of it. That looks good. Now, this part, we're going to mount right up in here. Pretty tight to the body of the impact gun, and it's going to mount here on this, and we've got a 1/2 inch thick plate. We're going to counterbore it when we get to that portion down to about a 1/4 inch thickness, because we want as much travel out of this piston as we can get. So we'll countersink this down into the body just a little bit. But let's do our initial layout, and I think we'll go ahead and cut this off, because we've got to where we don't need to have all this material now hanging out in space to contend with. So we can tuck this in pretty tight, right about there it looks like. And that will put our center of this assembly just about there. So if that's our center, we've got about 1 5/8 inches here, diameter. Okay, so I'm going to disassemble it, go ahead and cut this off, and center punch that so we don't lose that positioning right there. So, disassembly, shorten it up. Still just boring holes and opening things up. Now we're opening up the hole for the piston and or for the air cylinder, and we'll go ahead and get that drilled. Then we'll get out the boring head again, and we're going to turn our countersink. And after that, this part is basically done mechanically, other than we still have to drill and tap for our air lines going in there. So we'll have to do that before we go any further on it, once this portion is done. But then we'll just go back and mill away everything that doesn't really look like it belongs there. See if that's actually big enough for the air cylinder piston to fit through. Okay, that'll fit down through there just fine. And what we're going to do is we're just going to counterbore that down about halfway, which will be a 1/4 inch. And we'll cut it out to a little beyond that diameter there, so that this fits down in. Okay, let me pull it out of the vise, clean it up, and we'll take it back over to the bench and take a look at it. Alright, let's do about one more trial assembly. And then we're pretty much done with this part until we drill and tap it and then finish it out. since we have such a good time putting it all together and taking it apart, let's do it one more time. Ooh, that's an awful close fit. It's alright. And this nut will fit on the top. Well, let's look at this a little bit closer. It looks like we're not seated all the way down in. We may have to open up that smaller 3/4 inch hole just a little bit more. Okay. That sits on top, and our top plate mounts on there to hold everything else in alignment. So, how does it look now? And that's what we'll be looking at. That's the front of the mill right there. So, next thing is let's go ahead and cut a top plate. I'm going to contour these outer contours, but I'm not going to do that until after we get our fittings put in here to access that. And we may do something a little bit goofy there too. Let's wait and see. I'm not going to do any more with that plate now. So the next thing, like I say, is the top plate. And it has to have 2 holes like the bottom to butt up against the rod, so they'll be drilled and countersunk. And then we have to have a hole to attach this to adjust our or bottom our piston out again. So we'll have to have, I've got to come up with one more nut for that. One on top, one on the bottom. And I'm not sure, I was going to use this 3/8 or this 1/2 inch plate, just under 1/2 inch plate, but I think I'm going to use a piece of 1/4 inch. There's plenty of material there. I may look for even a smaller piece than that, because all I have to do is have here and here is the only place I need contact. So let me scrounge up some material, clean everything up again, and we'll proceed from here. Alright, well, we've done a little more initial fit up, and I'm to the point now. Top assembly's done mechanically, as I said before, except to drill and tap these 2 holes. I'll look at that. I may do that today. I may wait and do that later on, but I've got to do that. I've cut a piece for the top plate that will sit up above on the whole assembly like this. Don't know about rod length yet. I've had it set up on the mill. Looks like they're about 1 inch too long, which is, I left extra material intentionally. So I'm going to go along the rest of the day and just cut away everything that doesn't look like it belongs on there, which means I'm basically going to bob all 4 corners off of these. You know, I've got them marked on the other side where I'm going to cut them. But we're going to go ahead and disassemble that. I'm not going to worry about filming that. We've seen an end mill run before. So we'll do that, and then we'll move on probably to the next part, which will be the control valve after we get this part set up. I've got to pick up a 19mm socket, and I'll have to build a little adapter or a little spacer sleeve to go on the drawbar itself. The drawbar is actually a little bit long, and it's got basically a lock nut on it. It's got a long hex nut on there that I don't want on there. I just want a spacer with the power drawbar, because I don't want when the socket comes down, I don't want it to overreach and interfere with that, or for that to float free. So what I'll do is I'll probably take a piece of brass or bronze. I've got a hunk down here, just a piece of round stock, slightly smaller than that 19mm hex on the top, so it won't interfere with it. We'll do a spacer, and we'll do a fairly close fit, and then a little centering bell on the bottom so that it will center in the drawbar itself, because right now it tends to not tighten down, you know, perfectly centered up. It tends to wander off the side a little bit. So we'll do that, but that's about all I'm going to show for this part of it. Hopefully you found this a little bit interesting, and give you some ideas anyway about what you can do with your equipment. And you know, if you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, and if you smash that bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And as always, any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below, and thanks for taking the time to watch.